Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead Different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. I cannot wait to introduce you to my good friend, Eileen McDargh, today. She is one of the people I met when I first started in this entrepreneurial journey, helping people discover their why. And I've got to tell you about Eileen McDargh. She's the Chief Energy Officer of the Resiliency Group and McDargh Communications. With a rich background as an internationally recognized Hall of Fame speaker, facilitator, and leader guide. She has written 8 books and has continually been ranked in the top 1/3 of the world's communication professionals by Global Gurus International, a British-based provider of resources for leadership, communication, and sales training. I cannot wait to have you talk to us, Eileen McDargh. How are you?
I'm great, and talking to you makes me even better.
Well, thank you so much for being here. How has your 2024 gotten off to a start, Eileen? I know you're in California and you had to deal with all that rain recently, but what are you excited about right now?
What I'm excited about? I'm excited about what surprises I will uncover in 2024. And the reason I say that is sometimes we become so busy with all the stuff that we don't leave ourselves open to new adventures. And so I've decided this is my year of adventure. This is my year of discovering what more can I learn. I think I mentioned to you earlier before we started, Dan, I'm studying Spanish. I want to push the boundaries out. In fact, I think of myself where I am right now as being a modern elder. And what that means to me, Dan, is that what I have to offer is wisdom. I'm not going to go push. What I want to do is I want to bring together the things that I know and share them. And of course, my goal is just like yours, is to how can we make a world that works for everyone?
I love that. And, you know, Eileen, your background is in speaking. You're a Hall of Fame speaker. What do you love talking about? You're a top 10 motivational speaker. And I know resilience is big for you, but what's your favorite topic to talk about?
How many children do you have, Dan? And which one do you love the most? Each one you love differently for a different reason. One of the things is I do like talking about resilience. I was fascinated. I was talking to a healthcare organization. They said, well, we don't like that word resilience. I said, why? Because we don't want to go back. I said, I don't define resiliency as going back. I say throw out the dictionary. Resilience is not about going back. It's about growing and moving forward. So humans don't go back. Trees do. Steel bends. We don't go back. So I do like that. I also like talking about leadership as it comes to how do we lead lives that bring us both joy as well as make a difference. And I obviously love talking to women in leadership too, because I think there's great possibilities for us. And in the midst of all of that, Dan, I love to tell stories too, because stories are incredible teachers.
Well, you're also a top leadership coach, right? So the name of the show is Lead Different. And we want to talk about what is I believe that if you do what everybody else does, you're going to get what everybody else gets. So if you lead the way everyone else does, you're going to get results that everyone else gets. So how do we do something different? What does it mean to you to lead different?
I'll use one word: connection. And well, actually 2 words: connection and compassion. I think when I see some people and I'm going to put in leadership positions, because just because you're in a position doesn't mean you're a leader. It means you got a title, but it doesn't mean you're a leader. And I think what what the workforce is looking for, what we're all looking for, and maybe it was underscored by the pandemic, which pushed us all away, is we want to be heard, understood, and served. Those three things. And I think to lead differently, it means you actually hear what people are saying. You make sure you understand them, and then how do you serve them? So it is the notion of servant leadership. It's not, okay, what does the stock market say? What does this say? And you go for short-term results. I think really it is all about connection and compassion and creating those kinds of synergies, because that's why people will stay with us. And they want to know that they are contributors. They're not just pieces on a flow chart. They're not just names on a matrix. So contribution. And also the other one is that people are growing. Nobody wants to stay still. So I think to lead differently is to really help people see how they contribute. And to do that, you have to be heard, understood, and served.
So one of the things I like talking about now, I can't wait. This is so great about having you on, someone you've been there and done a lot of this stuff, Eileen. So I believe that great leaders lead people and they inspire people, right? I believe there's two types of leaders who inspire us to be our absolute best and bring the best out of all of us. And there's those leaders, like you said, that are bosses. And the only reason we do what they say is because they're the boss. And given the choice, I want to be that first leader. I want to lead teams that are energized, engaged, empowered, and they want to do their work. They want to do it because they love each other. They love the mission. They love their leader. So what do leaders need to do in order to accomplish that and to be that kind of leader that people would run through a brick wall for?
Well, first off, I think you have to look at who is in your immediate circle. And depending on where you are within this leadership hierarchy, it might be that you are restricted to maybe 6 people. Go beyond that. Imagine the quote leader who walks to the front desk and says, tell me what it's like being the receptionist. Tell me what it's like and really listen. So the leader who gets out of that office, gets out of that hierarchy and begins to say, tell me what you know. When people think that you as a leader want to know what it's like, because I got to tell you, there are more amazing ideas that are within our organizations. In fact, I remember, Dan, one time I was doing work for a steel service plant. And I went talked to the guy he was running the big operation. And he said, he was sitting there pushing the buttons and doing everything. And he said, those guys over there, he was pointing at the corporate office that was a distance. He said, I'm going to retire in 3 weeks. They're not going to know what I know because no one ever bothered to come over here and say, what do we need to know that you can help us do what you do better? They don't even know me. That made such an impact on me because they stayed in their own little bubble, their country club bubble, if you will. There are lots of people who aren't in that country club. And the degree to which you're willing to reach out and learn. It's amazing, the ideas. It's amazing, the insights. And also sometimes we ask people to do things because it's the way we've always done it. And It wastes time, it wastes energy. And to me, resiliency is all about energy management. So I want to get rid of the stuff that doesn't add value. And I can do that not by thinking I have the answer, but the people around me have some answers.
That's really, really good. And you talked earlier about listening, making people feel seen, heard, and understood and valued. So this is an employee that's about to retire. So he's been there years, decades, probably, and doesn't feel like he's valued, right? Because he's going to take all that knowledge and it's going to go away when he goes away.
Yep, that's absolutely right.
It was bothered to ask him.
Well, it was just so powerful. I mean, I had on my hard hat and I'm going through this plant, and then I walk up to where this guy is with all the, and he was this big old guy, and he's just kind of sitting there like this. He said, "Yep, they never ask, and I'm not going to tell them if they don't want to come and know." And it was just, this was years ago. But I don't think that is uncommon today.
Yeah. Well, here's what I think what you're bringing up is really important. I remember when I was in the military, and I had to lead troops, and my commander said, "Well, you just got to get out there and walk around," and he called it leadership by walking around. And it was so important to get into the motor pool, go meet the drivers and the mechanics working on the trucks, on the tanks, the go visit the armory and where they're cleaning all the weapons and doing all that work that has to get done. That's not a lot of fun. The fun stuff's getting in that M1 tank and rolling over hills or going to the firing range and stuff. That's fun. But most of the time in the military, you're doing maintenance. You're getting equipment ready, and leadership by walking around sounds like that's what you're talking about here. That's what this company was missing. Now, who were you working with at this company? We don't want to name any names, but who were you working with? The leadership group? What was the purpose of the site?
This was so long ago with this steel organization. I think I did have the leadership group, and in fact, they had 3 different operations, and it turns out one of them was doing really well, the other 2 were not, and when I said to them, I didn't use any names, but I said, you got somebody who's sitting here and you all haven't gone out to listen to him. They got really mad. They didn't want to hear that at all. And you know what? To me, we're hired, Dan, not to tell people what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. And all I was doing was telling them the stuff that they should have been doing. And the group over there that had done very well, they're just kind of sitting there smug. And then I said, okay, this was interesting. I said, so what's the profit that you've made? And so they didn't see that what this one group that was doing well actually was reflected on all of them, because you're all in the same business. Why are you keeping what you know over here quiet when you need to be sharing with the other people too? So it was an interesting time. It's an interesting time. And I love when I can get management teams together and we explore. And when we explore, by the way, the first thing we start with is I do a very in-depth survey, ask everybody the same set of questions from the top all the way, whoever's going to be in that management team. And then I create position papers that I give back to them. So if Joe Schmo over there said, well, the big thing that's wrong with us is that we have noodles in the cafeteria, and nobody else said noodles, we're not going to talk about noodles. But before we get to the issues, we talk about and we learn who sits around the table. Who are you? We don't talk about position. We just said, who are you? That's really important.
And how do you lead that kind of conversation? Because I can see that becoming a very challenging conversation for people. How do you lead a conversation on who are you?
Well, one of the things that, and Dan, I know you do this too, is that I can remember this one group that was regulatory affairs for a global pharmaceutical company.
Right.
And I said, and we were doing this in New York. And so here's the head guy. And I had a video of Dudamel, who used to be the head of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And he was talking about his players. And Dan, it was so powerful. He said, I love them. Oh, they are so wonderful. They do this and they do that. He had this great accent. And I said to the group sitting there, about 22 people, I said, wouldn't you love people to say this about you? That you want to be able to say that? I said, so that means you have to learn about them. So I asked them 3 things. I said, I want to know your favorite song. If you had to say this song is me, I want to know what that is. I want a picture of you as a teen or a toddler. I wanted a picture like that. And then we also took, what was the 3rd thing? Oh, if you could be anything, if you could live your life all over, what would you want to be? I had those 3 things. And throughout the course of our 2 days, I interspersed this. So I would play a piece of music and I'd say, okay, so look around here. Whose piece of music do you think that was? The first one, Dan, was In the Gotta Defeat. It was a head song from the 60s. The person who claimed it, and nobody would have guessed it, was the only attorney in the group.
Really?
And then when I would put out a picture of someone as a teen or a toddler, who is this? See, the point is we have all been teens. We have all been toddlers.
Right.
said, who do you want to be when you want to grow up? They were able to see different things about each other. Yes,
Right.
I took them through an assessment. I took them through the disc, so they looked at some of their communication styles. But that was, and it was only after we did that that we began to say, what are the issues?
Yeah.
What do we have here? And so it were those common things that are uncommon. And if I can bring them out, they look at each other very differently.
Yeah. You know, one of the challenges, I was at a keynote in Mexico with an organization that works with coaches who work with entrepreneurs.
Mm.
And I was talking to one of the coaches, and one of the challenges he sees right now is the transfer of ownership that's happening between the older generation, the boomers, the Xers that are starting to retire, and they're handing the business off to that next generation, who often, not that, you know, and I don't want to say this, not that they're lazy, but they appear lazy because they have different priorities. I think their priorities are right. They're saying, hey, I want life-work balance, and I want it in my 20s. I don't want to wait till I'm 50 or 60 or 70 to start thinking about life-work balance. I want to be able to enjoy my kids growing up. And meanwhile, this older generation, my generation and above, we're saying, well, wait a minute. We gave up all that. We worked hard and we worked our way up. And what do you mean you want paid time off and you want all these things?
Hmm.
But what I found in the activities that you're talking about, when you do that kind of thing, it brings people together, right? That favorite song or how they looked as a teenager. If you could be anything, all of a sudden you've got a 25-year-old who wants to be the same thing that Joe in accounting, who's been there 30 years, wanted to be when he grew up, if he could make things different. And you bring up a great point that I want to make sure we talk about, because one of the things about leading different is, hey, let's get to know people at a deeper level, right? Through the power of self-awareness. So what are some of you've done this hundreds of times. So you mentioned, tell us what you would, send us your teen pick or your toddler pick, if you could be anything. And then your favorite song. What are some of your favorite icebreakers that have really done it for you?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, you can have icebreakers throughout a conference. So it's not just what happens at the first one. So, you know, the first one might be give people a playing card.
Yeah.
And you have to go find somebody else who's got your same playing card. So it's a Jack of Diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
So go find the Jack of Diamonds. So here's what you want to ask people with the Jack of Diamonds. If you were going to take a bet that you think it would make it, what's the best bet you would ever make? Now you could make it up anything, and then you popcorn out. And I use it's a little. You can throw it. It's a throwable lavalier within this piece of foam, and so you can toss it. And so whoever gets it tosses it. Other icebreakers. I love icebreakers, and it's not just icebreakers. It could be team makers versus icebreakers.
Ooh, I like that.
Other things I've done. I can see you're going to take all of these things down and do them. That's right. Bring me in, I'll help you. It was a smaller group, and at the end of our time together, I had a jigsaw puzzle. It was a very simple jigsaw puzzle, but everybody got a piece. And I said, you were to find whose piece matches yours. But before you put it down, they didn't know what the picture was. I want you to tell that person one of the things that you appreciate about them by being in these 2 days together. Then your piece can go together. And so people walked around looking for that other piece, and then say, this is Dan, this is why I appreciate it. You have a commonality, a humanality about you that makes me feel very comfortable with you. And I want to say thank you. So they shared that. The picture, Dan, ended up being something like out of Sesame Street. And it was kids with I don't know, I think it was a beach ball and a pail of sand or something. And I said, as simple as this is, you had fun doing this. You learn about each other. And it's when we put things together like a jigsaw that we create an organization that works.
You put the puzzle together, right?
Puzzle together. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. I love the way you talked about that. So one of the things we talk about is that self-awareness. You know, I believe that good leaders never want to hurt their teams. Good leaders don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I can't wait to go to work and crush the soul of one of my employees, right? But they do it. They do it because they're not self-aware. They're not aware of the impact that their language can have on people, right? When you know yourself and you know what your tendencies are, and we'll talk about, the way that I know Eileen. Eileen is a person whose why is to make sense of the complex and challenging. So that's what you lead with. You're a great, quick problem solver. Your how is to challenge the status quo. And we definitely have seen that just even in the few minutes we've spent together, and your what is to contribute. And that we definitely see that in you. You want to help others. You want to make people better. You want to make organizations better. You want to make a difference. But if you didn't know that about yourself, especially the make sense part, I've talked to people with that why. They're so good at problem solving that they get, sometimes they get what was I call it? Impatient with others, right? Because you can take information and really quickly make sense of it. And if you're the boss and it makes sense to you, but they're not getting it, does that happen with you? And I know you're probably really good at it. And as a coach, as a speaker, and as a trainer, you probably have to slow down to make sure people come along with you. So how do you deal with it?
Well, the expression, Dan, our strength is also our greatest weakness.
Yes.
And I think that's true, because I do get ideas fast, because I do try to make sense. And then I want to challenge, well, let's look at it this way. And so my what shall I call it? My learning point is, and I'm constantly learning it, is I jump too fast. Move. Let's do this. And I make mistakes. And so what happens when you do that is you have to say, whoa, I really blew that. You have to own what that was. And at the same time, you need to be authentic to who you are, which is why there are some organizations, when they call or I begin to work with them, I think I'm not the right person. They need to find somebody else. I disqualify myself if I don't feel that it's right.
Right.
And if I've challenged something and I go, no, that's just the way we're going to do it, I say, you need to find somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm not the right person for you.
So that's such a great, when we're talking about leading different, it also means using that as your filter. And you mentioned it, right? If you're going to come into an organization and you're going to see the problem really quickly and know what the solution is, you're going to challenge them to do it differently. You're going to think outside the box, and then you're going to contribute to their success. But if they won't take that out of the box idea, they're not looking for Eileen. That's
right. That's absolutely right. And like I said, I have disqualified myself a number of times, and there was something that just wasn't right. And I know, Dan, you've had that experience too. And there's also the thing about, if you're going to lead different, you also want someone whose values match yours. So if I were working, pretend that I had somebody, all I wanted was the almighty billable dollar. All I care about is profit. That's all I want is profit, profit, profit. I don't care what we do this way. I don't care what we charge. I just want to make sure I got a ton of profit here. That doesn't work for me. Yes, I want you to be profitable. Yes, people have to be paid. But you know what? If that's your only way that you're doing this, it just doesn't work for me. So that's another thing, I think, that if you're going to lead different, you want to be with people whose values match yours. That's a big deal.
That's really good. So where does that come from for you, Eileen? Where did, because I've always known confident, Hall of Fame speaker Eileen, but you've been doing this for a long time. And as a young coach or new coach entering the world of leadership coaching or speaking, they're going to say, well, I'm going to take that gig because it pays. I'm not going to say no and disqualify myself. Where does that courage come from, Eileen?
Well, first of all, I think it comes from experience, because you do screw up. And I can remember this so clearly. I accepted a piece of work. It was local, so I didn't have to travel to it. And it was to be an after dinner speaker. I'm not an after dinner speaker. You want an after dinner speaker, you need someone who's funny, someone, well, this group, but I needed the money. Okay. So the money spoke. And they had an open bar for the dinner. They served wine during the dinner. Then the CEO got up and spoke for 45 minutes and then introduced me. It was horrible. It was terrible. So never, it was just, honestly, I think I blacked this out of my brain, and I would have not taken their money if this is not going to work. They knew, I mean, the guy who brought me in had heard me, but it was more in a training session. He said, oh, no, you'll be a great after dinner speaker. So now I know a couple things. Number one, I'm not going to take an engagement when it's after dinner and they're drinking. I'm not going to do that. You need something different. Number two, I need to, I learned. I mean, that was, oh, damn, I bet that was 35 years ago. And I've never forgotten that. So what we learn is we learn from our mistakes where it didn't work well.
Right.
If you're willing to learn.
What about the challenge? When, take us back to where does you're challenging the status quo, breaking the rules, thinking outside the box. Where does that come from you? What's the first time you remember saying, you know what, why do we have to do it that way?
Oh, golly days. How many ways can I? Well, I'll tell you, I'm not going to go back that far, but actually it was 1999. Okay. And I chaired my professional conference, the national conference. So you have 2,000 of your peers for a 3-day conference. You screw up, you got a lot of bad karma coming on.
Right.
And we had always had all of our conferences looked alike. And I got together a team, and the team was, there were two things. Number one, you had to be willing to share with each other. Number two, you weren't going to lose your job to do this. So if you got something you have to do and we have to cover for you, we'll do that. But you got to be part of the team. And what we did, Dan, is we broke all the norms. Before at the conferences, people came in their Armani suits and their St. John knit, and they're all dressed up. So I went around to different parts of the nation when I was talking about the conference, and I said, okay, we're going to be in San Antonio in the summertime. There's 2 temperatures, Arctic and Sahara. That's what happens in the hotels. Number 2, you're going to have to do some walking. So I want you in comfortable clothes. I want you in jeans. We're going to make sure you have, I got those handheld like little fans that you could fan yourself with. Mm-hmm. Everything we did was different. The people I had on the main platform had never spoken to this group before, and they were amazed. We did everything. I spoke Spanish when I welcomed them to San Antonio. Aquí está un ciudad muy hermosa. Anyway, it was wonderful, and everything was different. We challenged the whole thing. And Dan, when it was over, I just felt, well, let me put it this way. People who are going to drop out of the organization said, I'm staying. Because they felt that instead of being this prim and proper and, this is the way we are, they could be who they were. Mm-hmm. And it was challenging. I challenged everything the way we did it. We don't have to do it this way.
How did that turn out for you in terms, it sounds like it was a fabulous meeting. You had people who were thinking of leaving. I read a statistic recently that 1 out of every 3 employees is actively looking for work.
It's probably true. It's probably true for a couple of reasons. Number one, and you mentioned this, the whole notion of work-life integration. I don't use the word balance. There's no such thing as balance. So I throw that word out. But it's work-life integration. And those who are younger than we are realize you don't have to give up your life. You don't have to give up your family to do that. And I think there's and reasonably so, there's a requirement for that. The second one is feeling not heard, not listened to, and not understood, not appreciated for whatever it is they bring. So they don't feel that they're making a contribution. They're just, putting in the time card or whatever you want to call it that they're doing. Right. And I'll leave as soon as I think I can have something that, gives me some joy. The other thing I think is that people also want to keep learning. So if you could learn anything, so I might not be able to give you a raise, but what is something that you could do here that would make you? Well, I've always wanted to sit with those people who are in charge of marketing. I've always wanted to nurse. Great. We'll put you over there so you can try it. See what it's like. Who knows? Maybe you'll like it. So there's a couple reasons I think why people say 1 out of 3 wants to leave.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at right now what's going on in our U.S. Congress. The number of people are saying, I'm out of here. This is not fun anymore. There is all this infighting. There's all this nastiness. I don't want to do this. And that can happen in organizations that are not political, because actually every organization is political. And so I'm not having fun here anymore. Life. That was another thing I think that is happened at 9/11, and I think COVID reinforced it. Life is too short.
Mm-hmm.
It's too short. So from a coaching standpoint, if life is too short, what is it that you want to put at least in the next year or two in your life?
Mm-hmm.
And you work on that. And the older you get, Dan, there's more behind you than in front of you. And that's one of the questions I help individuals master is, what do you want in front of you?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to die with regrets.
Yeah. Oh, you're reading my mind. That was my next question, because I really like talking about why not moments.
Yeah.
Times in our lives when we said why not, and we're glad we did, because I can't remember the number, but there's a book called The Top 5, Top 9, Top 10 Regrets of the Dying. I can't remember how many there were. I think it was top 5. And people that are on their deathbed don't regret what they did. They regret what they didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
It's those times that they didn't say, why not? Right? I say all the time, why not? Let's try it. Let's give it a whirl and see what happens. Right? So what's a why not moment that you're so glad you said why not to, because you're not going to regret that you didn't do it?
Well, number one, marrying my husband.
Yeah.
We'll be married, Dan, 44 years on May 18th. So that was why not? And it was the second marriage for both of us. So that was a good, why not? Let's try this. And I adopted his 3 kids. That's a big why not.
That is a huge why not.
Because there are no guarantees in anything. So why not try this? One of the things I've challenged myself to do over the last, now it's going to be 4 years, is every month I must do something I have never done before.
Ooh.
Why not? Why not? And it can be anything from taking a Pilates class. I've never taken a Pilates class. Why not? Eating a raw oyster. Why not? Going to some place I've never been before. Why not? Taking that Spanish class. Why not? Just because you started doesn't mean you have to go all the way through it. But like you said, why not try this? So I'm a big believer in saying, why not? Try it.
Well, this is almost anticlimactic, but what do you think we end the show on that note, Eileen?
Why not?
Thank you so much, Eileen. This has been so much fun. You're a great friend of Why Not Leadership. We're so glad to welcome you to the Lead Different podcast. We can't wait to share it with the world and share your wisdom, your knowledge, and your amazing energy. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week. And you guys stay tuned for our next episode of the Lead Different podcast.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.